Question. Yoga means union. I wonder union of what with what? Maharshi answers. Exactly, yoga implies prior division, and it means later union of one thing with another. But who is to be united and with whom? You are the seeker, seeking union with something. If you assume this, then that something must be apart from you. But yourself is intimate to you and you are always aware of it. Seek it and be it. The it will expand as the infinite and there will be no question of yoga. There is no separation for yoga to be. Find out to whom is the viyuga or separation. That is yoga. Yoga is common to all paths. Yoga is really nothing but ceasing to think that you are different from the self or reality. All the yogas, karma, jnana, bhakti and raj, are just different paths to suit different natures with different modes of evolution. They are all aimed at getting people out of the long cherished notion that they are different from the self. There is no question of union or yoga in the sense of going and joining something that is somewhere away from us or different from us, because you never were or could be separate from the self. Question. What is the difference between an yoga and inquiry? Maharshi answers. Yoga enjoins chit vritti nirodh, repression of thoughts, whereas I prescribe atmanveshan, quest of oneself. This latter method is more practicable. The mind is repressed in swoon, or is the effect of fasting. But as soon as the cause is withdrawn, the mind revives, the thoughts begin to flow as before. There are just two ways of controlling the mind. Either seek its source, or surrender it to be struck down by the supreme power. Surrender is the recognition of the existence of a higher overruling power. If the mind refuses to help in seeking the source, let it go and wait for its return, then turn inwards. No one succeeds without patient perseverance. Question. Is it necessary to control one's breath? Maharshi answers. Breath control is only an aid for diving deep within oneself. One may as well dive down by controlling the mind. When the mind is controlled, the breath is controlled automatically. One need not attempt breath control, mind control is enough. Breath control is only recommended for those who cannot control their mind straight away. Question. When should one do pranayam and why is it effective? Maharshi answers. In the absence of inquiry and devotion, the natural sedative, breath regulation, may be tried. This is known as the path of yoga. If life is imperiled, the whole interest centers round one point, the saving of life. If the breath is held, the mind cannot afford to jump at its pets, which are external objects. Thus there is rest for the mind so long as the breath is held. All attention being turned on breath or its regulation, other interests are lost. The source of breath is the same as that of the mind. Therefore the subsidence of either leads effortlessly to the subsidence of the other. Question. Will concentration on chakras quiet the mind? Maharshi answers. Fixing their minds on psychic centers such as the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus chakra, yogis remain any length of time without awareness of their bodies. As long as the state continues, they appear to be immersed in some kind of joy. But when the mind, which has become tranquil, emerges and becomes active again, it resumes its worldly thoughts. It is therefore necessary to train it with inquiry. It will then attain a state in which there is neither subsidence nor emergence. Question. Is the mind control induced by pranayam also temporary? Maharshi answers. Quiescence lasts only so long as the breath is controlled. So it is transient. The goal is clearly not pranayam. It extends on to pratyahar, withdrawal, dharana, concentration of the mind, dhyana, meditation, and samadhi. Those stages deal with control of the mind. Such mind control becomes easier for a person who has earlier practiced pranayam. Pranayam therefore leads one to the higher stages. Because these higher stages involve controlling the mind, one can say that the mind control is the ultimate aim of yoga. A more advanced man will naturally go direct to the control of the mind without wasting his time in practicing control of breath. Question. Pranayama has 3 phasas: exhalation, inhalation, and retention. How should they be regulated? Maharshi answers. Completely giving up identification with the body alone as exhalation, or rechak, merging within through the inquiry, who am I? Along is inhalation, or purak, abiding as the one reality, I am that, alone as retention, ar or kumbhak. This is the real pranayam. Question. I find it said in Mahayoga that in the beginning of meditation one may attend to the breath, and that after a certain amount of stillness of mind is attained, one can dive into the heart seeking the source of the mind. I have been badly in want of some such practical hint. Can I follow this method? Is it correct? Maharshi answers. The thing is to kill the mind somehow. Those who have not the strength to follow the inquiry method are advised to adopt pranayama as a help to control the mind. This pranayama is of 2 kinds, controlling and regulating the breath, or simply watching the breath. Question. For controlling the breath, is not the ratio 1:4:2, for inhaling, retaining the breath and exhaling best? Maharshi answers. All those proportions, sometimes regulated not by counting but by uttering mantras, are aids to controlling the mind. That is all. Watching the breath is also one form of pranayam. Inhaling, retaining, and exhaling is more violent and may be harmful in some cases, when there is no proper guru to guide the seeker at every step and stage. But merely watching the breath is easy and involves no risk. Question. Is the manifestation of Kundalini Shakti or power possible only for those who follow the yogic path of acquiring power, or is it possible also for those who follow the path of devotion or love? Maharshi answers. Who does not have Kundalini Shakti? When the real nature of that Shakti is known, it is called Akhand Akar Vritti, or unbroken consciousness, or effulgence of I. Kundalini Shakti is there for all people whatever path they follow. It is only a difference in name. Question. It is said that the Shakti manifests itself in 5 phases, 10 phases, 100 phases, and 1,000 phases. Which is true, 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000? Maharshi answers. Shakti has only one phase. If it is said to manifest itself in several phases, it is only a way of speaking. The Shakti is only one. Question. Can a Jnani help not only those who follow his path but also others who follow other paths, such as yoga? Maharshi answers. Undoubtedly. He can help people whatever path they choose to follow. It is something like this. Suppose there is a hill. There will be many paths to climb it. If he were to ask people to climb by the way he came, some may like it and some may not. If people who do not like it are asked to climb by that path, and by that path only, they will not be able to come up. Hence a Jnani helps people following any particular path, whatever it may be. People who are midway may not know about the merits and demerits of other paths, but one who has climbed to the top and sits there observing others coming up, is able to see all the paths. He will therefore be able to tell people who are coming up to move a little to this side, or that, or to avoid a pitfall. The goal is the same for all. Question. How can one direct the prana of life forces into the Sushumna Nadi, which is a psychic nerve in the spine, so that the Chit-Jar Granthi, or the identification of consciousness with the body, can be severed in the manner stated in Sri Ramana Gita? Maharshi answers. By inquiring, "Who am I?" the yogi may be definitely aiming at rousing the Kundalini and sending it up the Sushumna. The Jnani may not be having this as his object. But both achieve the same results, that of sending the life force to the Sushumna and severing the Chit-Jar Granthi. Kundalini is only another name for Atma, or self, or Shakti. We talk of it as being inside the body, because we conceive ourselves as limited by this body. But it is in reality both inside and outside, being not different from self, or the Shakti of self. Question. How to churn up the nadis, or psychic nerves, so that the Kundalini may go up the Sushumna? Maharshi answers. Though the yogi may have his methods of breath control for this object, the Jnani's method is only that of inquiry. When by this method the mind is merged in the self, the Shakti or Kundalini, which is not apart from the self, rises automatically. The yogis attach the highest importance to sending the Kundalini up to the Sahasrara, the brain center, or the 1,000-petaled lotus. They point out the scriptural statement that the life current enters the body through it. And ayu, that viyog, or separation, having come about that way. So yog, or union, must also be affected in the reverse way. Therefore, they say, we must by yoga practice gather up prana and enter Sahasrara for the consummation of yoga. The Jnani on the other hand point out that the yogi assumes the existence of the body and its separateness from the self. Only if the standpoint of separateness is adopted can the yogi advise effort for reunion by the practice of yoga. In fact, the body is in the mind, which has the brain for its seat. That the brain functions by light borrowed from another source is admitted by the yogis themselves in their theory. The Jnani further questions, if the light is borrowed, it must come from its native source. Go to the source direct and do not depend on borrowed resources. That source is the heart, the self. The self does not come from anywhere else and enter the body through the crown of the head. It is as it is, ever sparkling, ever steady, unmoving and unchanging. The individual confines himself to the limits of the changeful body or of the mind, which derives its existence from the unchanging self. All that is necessary is to give up this mistaken identity, and that done, the ever-shining self will be seen to be the single non-dual reality. If one concentrates on the Sahasrara, there is no doubt that the ecstasy of Samadhi comes. The vasanas, that is the latent mental tendencies, are not however destroyed. The yogi is therefore bound to wake up from the Samadhi. Because release from bondage has not yet been accomplished. He must still try to eradicate the vasanas inherent in him so that they cease to disturb the peace of his Samadhi. So he passes down from the Sahasrara to the heart through what is called the Jeevanadi, which is only a continuation of the Sushumna. The Sushumna is thus a curve. It starts from the lowest chakra, rises through the spinal cord to the brain, and from there bends down and ends in the heart. When the yogi has reached the heart, the Samadhi becomes permanent. Thus we see that the heart is the final center. Question. Is this heart the same as the physical heart? Maharshi answers. No, it is the origin of the I thought. Question. May we take it to be the source of the Antahkaran? Maharshi answers, the inner organs, or Antahkaran, are classified as 5. 1. Knowledge, Janana. 2. Mind, Manas. 3. Intellect, Buddhi. 4. Memory, Chit, and 5. The ego, Ahankar, some say only The. Latter 4, others say only 2, mind and the ego, still others say the Antahkaran as only 1. Whose different functions make it appear differently and hence its different names. Heart is thus the source of the Antahkaran. There is the body which is insentient, there is the self which is eternal and self-luminous. In between the two there has arisen a phenomenon, namely the ego, which goes under these different names: mind, intellect, memory, the ego, vritti, or mode of mind, power, or shakti, life current or prana, etc. Seek your source, the search takes you to the heart automatically. The Antahkaran is only an idea to explain the subtle body. The physical body is made up of the elements earth, air, fire, water, and ether. It is insentient. The self is pure and self-luminous, and thus self-evident. The relation between the two is sought to be established by positioning a subtle body, composed of the subtle aspects of the 5 elements on the one hand, and the reflected light of the self on the other. In this way the subtle body, which is synonymous with the mind, is both sentient and insentient. Again, by the play of the sattva guna on the elements, their brightness manifests as the mind, and the senses, by the play of rajas, manifests the prana, and limbs, by the play of tamas, manifests the gross phenomena of the body. Question. But the mind is reputed to have these 3 qualities also. Maharshi. Yes. Shuddha sattva is quite pure. Mishra, or mixed sattva, is a combination of sattva with other qualities. The quality sattva implies only its predominance over the other 2 qualities. The intricate maze of philosophy of different schools is said to clarify matters and reveal the truth. But in fact they create confusion where no confusion need exist. To understand anything there must be the self. The self is obvious. Why not remain as the self?